Hey everyone, welcome to Bible 365. I am your host, Kathy Carter, and I am coming to you from my backyard. Again, it's a super hot day, but it's beautiful, and so I'm out in this corner and I'm trying to just stay away from the sun, but stay outside and stay beautiful. If you hear lots of crazy noises in the background, I got neighbors all outside as well because it's just one of those kind of days. So this is Bible 365. We're going through the Bible in 365 days, 1 year. About 4 chapters every single day. I'm using the reading plan called the Chronological Bible Reading Plan from oneyearbibleonline.com. You would go onto that site, download, go into their chronological reading plans, download their chronological reading plan. It is a free reading plan, and you can just use your own Bible and read along with me. That being said, today is day 148. So we have done 147 days. Every extra day, I'm just so excited that we've still stuck with this, and I've got a lot of you guys sticking with me. It is 5/27, so May 27th, and our reading today is Proverbs 1 through 4. And so I want to just jump into one thing really quickly before I go through any of the background. And what I want to jump into is for anyone who is a new listener, I work in a public school, and I love my job. I work one-on-one, one-on a couple with students who have emotional trauma. And I tell you this, I share this with you because we have to do all kinds of trainings all year long. And so we need to learn how to be better at our job, which is amazing, right? I'm not against any of that, except every single time I go, I hate everything that comes from it. And so, so I guess maybe I am against the trainings, but I think training is important. I just think the trainings that we are getting are not that great. And I'm just going to tell you why. And it has anything and everything to do with the book of Proverbs. And it's because, and I'm probably going to do a couple of side videos on it because there was so much that was there that I actually genuinely really want to have some deeper discussions about what it means to be a believer and a follower of Christ and go through some of these things and what that means in our faith. So look for those. I might do them in a series or a session, or we'll see. Just adding that into my day because who doesn't have extra time? Okay, so the reason that that they are an issue is that they are trying to fix a system and they don't understand the foundation of the system. So the foundation is that as humans, we are broken. And we are broken because back in the book of Genesis, we ate from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And now we know what evil is. We know what it is. We know what it does. And in some ways we like it. And I know most of us probably wouldn't want to admit that, but we get off base on what is good and evil, what is right, what is wrong, what is just, what is unjust. And sometimes we love the lack of justice. We love things that are wrong. And these are things that are according to God. And so without this foundation, she's going to stop soon. The dog's going to stop barking because my dog went in. But without this foundation, anything that we're doing is just making adjustments when our plumb line is wrong. And I know I mentioned plumb line on a few occasions. So you're trying to fix a system, but you don't actually recognize what's broken. So your fix can't fix the wrong thing that's broken. So if I go back to my iron forging days, which was not that long ago, I am not a good iron forger because I've done it a total of 1 time. So when I would bang on the piece of iron, I had no foundation for knowing how to fix it, right? So I would be trying to bend it and I would go too far. And then I would flip it over, and instead of doing it the right way, because my skills and my foundation aren't good, I would bend it too far the other way. So then it would kind of be like this weird crooked piece of iron instead of being exactly what it is that they wanted it to be, because my foundation was off. I didn't have the proper learning. I didn't have the proper techniques. I didn't, right? Because my foundation was off. I didn't understand any of that. And so I'm going to say that's where I'm starting to struggle. And so what Solomon is saying is he's having the same issue with his sons. Their foundation is off. And so he's teaching this to his people, to the people of Israel, and to his actual sons, because their foundation is off. And so what Solomon is trying to do is Solomon is trying to build in a godly foundation for his sons. So he's trying to get their foundation to be what it's supposed to be, so then they can do the things that they're supposed to do. So let's start in Proverbs 1. These proverbs, very particularly, are written by Solomon. That's not actually going to be true of all of our proverbs, but for a huge amount of them, they are written by King Solomon. King Solomon is the king over Israel. He is the son of King David. He is ruling the nation right now. So most of Israel and many other places that David conquered, he is now in peace, and he is ruling those areas. We're going to find out a little bit more about him, but he has married many women, and he has a lot of children. And so he's speaking directly to his children. So this is the purpose of these proverbs. And proverbs are like snippets of wisdom, right? And so if you guys remember when we read before, at the end of the last section we were in, it said that he wrote thousands of proverbs. So he spoke, in verse 32, it said, he spoke 3,000 proverbs, and his songs numbered 1,005. So he spoke 3,000 proverbs. I don't think we have all of them in here. We do have a lot, but not all of them. And so this is where we're coming from. Now, Solomon wrote this. I'm going to say this section that we're reading sections 1 through 4 in this, chapters 1 through 4. It looks to me like chapters 1 through 3 all kind of flow together, and then chapter 4 is a completely separate chapter. I'm going to treat it that way. If for whatever reason that doesn't resonate with you, that's okay, because it may or may not be true. We don't know for 100% certainty whether that is true or not, but that's just the way I'm going to treat it for right now. So I'm starting in Proverbs 1, and we're going to lay some foundation. I could go over this little section for an hour, going over a little bit of foundation of the purpose of these proverbs. Proverbs of Solomon, son of David, king of Israel. Boom. So we know who he is. He's the highest person in the land. He is the closest person to the Lord besides some of the priests and prophets. And the whole purpose of these is for gaining wisdom and instruction. If you remember, when Solomon had first come to the kingdom, had first been given the kingdom by David, God came to him and said, what do you want? And he said, I want wisdom. And then God blessed him with wisdom. So this is God's wisdom, not Solomon's wisdom. This is God's wisdom that he is imparting on his sons. So he says this is for gaining wisdom and instruction, for understanding words of insight. So the whole purpose of this is for people to be wise. We are not wise on our own. We think we're wise on our own. There's going to be a proverb in here about that. We think we're wise on our own. We are not. We need God for all of these things. So it says, for receiving instruction in prudent behavior, doing what is right and just and fair. And I think if you polled 1,000 people, 999 of those people would say, of course, I want to do what's right and just and fair, right? So people in some ways desire this, but they might not either have the wisdom to understand what it is, or they might not desire it over their own desires for something different. So they might think they desire it, but not necessarily. All right. So it also says for giving prudence to those who are simple. And I looked at prudence. So prudence is just doing what is right. So to be prudent is really to just be careful and do what is right. So to be prudent to those who are simple. So this is also, he's giving this to people who don't really necessarily have a full understanding. Simple doesn't mean dumb, but it just means not necessarily complex. So someone who needs a little bit of help. Knowledge and discretion to the young. So I would also put that in that category. Like the young don't fully understand. Their brains aren't fully formed, right? So this is for those to get understanding and then to share this with other people. And it says, let the wise listen and add to their learning. So this actually isn't for the one who doesn't want help. So the one who thinks they got all their stuff together, that's actually not for this. And that's not who this is for. This is for those who already have some wisdom, who know enough to know that they don't know enough. So to know that they go, I got it. I'm having some trouble with this. I need a little bit more understanding. I'm having troubles, and so I need to get to have more understanding. So that's what this is for. So you already have a little bit of wisdom to recognize that you aren't wise. I think the older we get, the more we start to really understand that. The young always think that they know everything. I have troubles with that too. So let the wise listen and add to their learning, and let the discerning get guidance. So these people already have some discernment. So let them get guidance in the ways in which they discern, for understanding proverbs and parables, for the sayings and riddles of the wise. So let them kind of understand all this. So he's praying a little bit. And then he starts out with, and then in verse 7, it says, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and instruction. So I'll tell you right now, if you despise wisdom and instruction, you're probably being foolish. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. This fear is it's 3374, so it is a Hebrew word, and it's yirah, and this means it means reverence. And so I know I've discussed this before. We say fear, we don't, even when we say reverence, because we could say reverence the Lord, and I think because of our short-sightedness, we don't understand the great picture of what that means. So fear, I think we use as a different kind of word to mean reverence, but we lack a little bit of a full understanding of what that means. So reverence is a deep respect for something or someone. And so to revere someone, we have a deep respect. And so you know that this is bigger, better, and badder than you. And so there is a little bit of actual fear there, but there's also a deep respect and a deep understanding that this is greater, smarter, better than you. And so you want to follow that and listen to that. And so reverence or fear or honor, respect, right? All of those things in really deep ways, not these superficial things. That is the beginning of wisdom. So if you have that reverence for the Lord, that's where you start with wisdom. I'm going to shout out to you, as I feel like I've been more and more. If you are someone who doesn't believe, I'm begging you, read this. Ask for wisdom. Ask for reverence from the Lord, right? Reverence to the Lord, reverence to the Lord. So ask for all of these things. Seek these things. If you're like, no way, this is awful, this is stupid, I want you to just give it a try and see what you think. All right, so moving on from that. So that's the whole purpose of this book. Giving people understanding, making the wise wiser, making the ones who have understanding, giving them a deeper understanding, and just drawing people closer and closer to the Lord. So in verse 7, he says, listen, my son, to your father's instructions. So we know right now he's talking to his sons. Well, he's talking to a son. Listen, my son, to your father's instruction, and do not forsake your mother's teaching. And I think these things come back a little bit. This is not the only time you hear this. So he's calling out to his son, someone that's younger than him, someone that he's older now, he's had children, he's got wisdom from the Lord, and he's like, hey, listen to us. We have this time in this generation that we are in, and this is really a soapboxy kind of moment. We are giving children way too much power. I have some of my own, and I can see where it rolls. We're even in this training that I was just in, they were like, you want these kids to have control over something because they feel like they don't have control over their lives. And I'm saying, no, we don't want them to have control. What we want is someone who has good control to teach them the way to have control, right? So like to teach, like we go, oh, you can go to the right or to the left. No. If they need to go to the left, we need to control the situation and guide them to the left and explain to them over and over again why going to the left is the right way, right? Not to give them the idea that they can control this. And so we're consistently giving over our wisdom and asking for wisdom from children who don't have wisdom. It's not that they're stupid. They don't have the ability to have wisdom. So he's calling out to his son, listen to your mother and your father. For those who aren't believers, we've been there. I have lived 48 years. I have lived more years than my children. I have had more experiences than my children. So I am in the worst case scenario, I'm going to have more wisdom than my children. So if we even, and I hate to take God out of the equation, but if we take God out of the equation, right? Like even in just a general sense, I'm going to have more wisdom than my children. Add God into the mix and how I follow the Lord and I try and glean wisdom from the Lord, then I have even more wisdom than them because they're not quite there yet, right? So this is what he's calling out for his son to do, because it looks to me like his son is getting a little bit wayward. So he's saying in verse 10, so he says to listen, he says, my son, if sinful men entice you, do not give in to them. right? Like there is something to be said that when somebody is doing something bad, they want other people to do it with them. So you're in a group and all these people are getting together and they're partying and they're having fun and they're like, and you're like, no, 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 thanks, not for me. And they don't want you to be that not for me person. They're like, I've had 6 drinks. You should have 6 drinks. You don't seem like you're as off the charts as I am. And so I want you to have more, right? So there's an encouragement that when we're in the midst of our wickedness, we want everyone to be, we don't want them judging us. So we want them to be exactly like us. We want them to do that. And so Solomon is saying to his son, don't listen to them, right? If they entice you, don't give in. Don't even go with them. Like, don't do any of these things. So he just says, so he lists kind of all the ways. And then he discusses in verse 19, these ways, all these ways of the evil man, these ways are the paths, such are the paths of all who go after ill-gotten gain. It takes away the life of those who get it. So if you're getting ill-gotten gain, if you're getting something that doesn't belong to you, that you didn't deserve, that you didn't earn in some ways, that was not given to you, then it takes away the life of you, right? So taking something that doesn't belong to you, it takes your life. And obviously I'm not going to say literally, because certainly people who do wicked things thrive all the time, live until their hundreds. But it takes away life, right? It drains your life. It sucks away at those things. And then you start following that path of the wicked. And then moving out into 20, it says, out in the open, wisdom is calling. So, right, so instead of doing this with these people, wisdom is calling to you. Turn your face to wisdom. She's raising her voice in the public square. Verse 22, how long will you who are simple love your simple ways? How long are you going to delight in your mockery? He says, repent. So he's telling these people, his sons, and anyone who is thriving in these sinful ways, repent. So Solomon's saying, stop doing this. Repent at my rebuke. He's like, then I'm going to tell you all of these things. Once you repent, you're going to start having the fear of the Lord, right? And then you're going to turn towards the Lord, and then that's the beginning of wisdom. And then you're going to be wise enough to start understanding these things. Verse 28, it says, then these, the mockers will call to me, but I'm not going to answer. They're going to look for me, but they're not going to find me. So he says, because disaster is going to strike them. And when it does, because you're not listening, I'm going to mock you. And then you're going to call out to me. You're going to want something from me. And I'm going to say no. Since they wouldn't accept my advice and spurn my rebuke, right? So he's not going to give them anything else. And then it moves right down and it says in verse 1 of Proverbs 2, my son, if you accept my words and store up my commands within you, turning your ear to wisdom and applying your hearts to understanding. Indeed, if you call out for insight and cry aloud for understanding, so cry out, reach for it. If you look for it like we search for gold, we want to work harder for more money. Look for wisdom like you look for that, right? Wisdom is one of the most important things you can find after God, and wisdom we get from finding God. It says, then you're going to understand what is right and good. Verse 12, it says, wisdom is going to save you from the wicked man. And one of the verses that I wrote, it says, because sometimes we want to lean on ourselves, and it's exhausting to try and lean on yourself, right? Like we try and make the right choice, and then we listen to things and things batter us. Like the news says this about this person. It says this. I know I've mentioned this before. When I go to the gym, I've got CNN on one channel. I got Fox right next to me on the other channel, right? They're both in front of me, and both of them are showing something almost exactly the same from completely different perspectives. Who do I believe? Whatever I feel in the mood to at the time, whatever closely relates to something that I'm going through, right? Like, who am I supposed to believe? That's exhausting. I want to lean on the Lord to know what's right, because leaning on my own understanding is not good for me. Verse 12, wisdom will save you from the ways of wicked men, from men whose words are perverse, they're crooked, those who delight in doing wrong. Wisdom will also save you from the adulterous woman. This gets a little interesting. So he says, wisdom will save you from the adulterous woman. So if we're very literal, someone who, it says, from the wayward woman and her seductive words. So this woman just goes around kind of trying to draw men into her clutches, right? And certainly we can say that that's true about women. Not all women, of course, but the adulterous woman. She's trying to draw you in, coming into her wicked ways, right? Doing things that you're not supposed to be doing, fornicating in ways that you're not supposed to be fornicating, looking on lust, ways that you're not supposed to be doing all those things. It says, none who go to her in verse 19, None who go to her return or attain the paths of life. And so in this, I'm going to say, yes, he could be talking about a literal adulterous woman. He could also be using this as an expression of turning towards the wicked and away from, so the adulterous woman and away from wisdom, who is also, it says she raises her voice. So wisdom is also a woman. So don't turn to the adulteress, turn to the wise. And then it says in verse 20, thus you will walk in the ways of the good and keep to the paths of the righteous. Verse 22, the wicked will be cut off from the land and the unfaithful will be torn from it. And it doesn't mean unfaithful in your marriage, although certainly that counts as the unfaithful. The unfaithful to God, right? Those who are unfaithful to God, they're going to be torn from the land. Moving on, continuing in Proverbs 3, it says, my son, don't forget my teaching. Keep my commands. They're going to prolong your life many years and bring you peace and prosperity. This could be literal. This could be figurative. I'm actually leaning on the fact that it could be literal. I know Solomon is kept on because he follows his ways, right? We say something about living long years because of the way he's following. And so very literally, the Lord could keep you alive because you are following him. And so there could be something very literal to it. Obviously, the figurative nature of it would be that you would continue your ways with the Lord for eternity. All right, so it says, let love and faithfulness never leave you. And then I want to just hit on some of these verses. In verse 4, it says, if you do this, you will win favor and a good name in the sight of God and man. I wanted to hit on this because I've been in a Christian community where a lot of times we will, and I'm just as guilty of this, so I'm really going to take this on myself. We will say things like, I'm going to follow the Lord, and I'm going to say what the Lord tells me to say, and some people just might hate it, right? Some people just might hate me because of it. And I want to say, there's a little bit of truth to that, but the longer I have lived in my faith, and the more I have really grasped the concepts of Jesus, people can hate my faith, but not hate me. And because I'm actually genuinely showing lovingness and kindness and honesty, right? I'm not being cruel. So even if if people who don't love the Lord do things that are sinful, I'm not shooting my mouth off and trying to point it out to those people, because they're not doing this. They're not following Solomon's words. And so they don't even have the understanding that what they're doing is against the Lord, because they don't know the Lord. So I'm not going to be hateful towards them because they don't know the Lord, right? I'm going to call out my house, right? I'm going to literally my house, my family, but also my house of the kingdom, right? So if you know me well, I'm going to probably step up if you're falling in a wayward way and I see it, and I know that that's what the Lord wants to rebuke you on that. But if you don't follow the Lord, I'm not going to, yeah, you don't recognize, you're not in the wise ways of the Lord. You don't have that understanding. And so I'm going to be kind. I'm going to be loving, right? My goal is to let you see the light of Jesus in me. And so I think that follows along with this proverb, that you're going to win favor and a good name in the sight of God and man. Right? It is what it is. And then I want to go into verse 7. It says, do not be wise in your own eyes. It's one of the things that I've brought up a few times, like just recognizing sometimes trying to be wise in your own eyes is exhausting. And the truth is there's way too much pride in that. And our wisdom doesn't come from us. My wisdom does not come from me, right? I haven't gotten smarter over the years. I mean, I'm older, so I have learned some things, but my wisdom comes from the Lord. Everything I do and everything I have comes from the Lord. Anything I learn, anything I grow in, it's directly from the Lord. Because I can learn things, just like I said, I went to that training today. I could have walked away and been like, that training was, wow, some really educated people gave me some amazing trainings. But the wisdom that I've learned from the Lord tells me that their foundation is off, right? So while I can walk away with a couple of pieces here and there, the truth of the matter is I learned that their foundation is off, right? And so I've learned to go back to what I've learned here and go from this and use this as my base in the way in which I treat people around me. So then in verse 9, it says, honor the Lord with your wealth, with the first fruits of all your crops. So this is, again, another theme of being wise is to honor the Lord, recognizing he gave you everything and you give back to him. And he says, because of this, your barns will be overflowing. And then in verse 11, it says, my son, do not despise the Lord's discipline. So there's a recognition here, and I'm going to go forward and I'm going to come back to this. There's a recognition here that even when we try and be wise and we follow all things, there will be ways in which we need to be disciplined. We are not perfect here on this earth. If we are perfect, Jesus didn't need to come, right? We wouldn't need to sacrifice any of these animals because we would be perfect. And the reality is that's just not true. So he's noting the reality that don't despise the Lord's wisdom and do not resent his rebuke. He disciplines those he loves. It says, blessed are those who find wisdom. She, wisdom, is more profitable than gold. She's precious, more precious than rubies. She has long life, right? Her left hand, she's got riches and honors. She is a tree of life to those who take hold of her. Those who hold wisdom fast will be blessed. Again, not money, not riches, not vacations, not houses, not school, right? Not any of these things, right? Sometimes we can focus on our education, not the amount of kids that you have, but wisdom. Wisdom is the thing that we're looking for. Verse 27, it says, do not withhold good from those whom it is due. Part of my training that we learned today is you want to be really kind to people who have some kind of trauma. And I'm going to represent that we all have trauma. Some have it significantly worse than others, right? Like I grew up in a home that was fantastic, but there's still trauma. I still didn't feel worthy, right? I still felt less than in certain areas, whether it be how much I could learn or how much I could draw or how much I could sing, right? I still didn't feel good as everybody else. And so everyone's got some form of trauma. So you don't withhold good from those whom it is due, right? So you are honoring, don't lie, don't cheat, don't steal from your neighbor. Verse 31, don't envy the violent or choose their ways. And you're going to say, of course I wouldn't envy the violent. We watch our kids play violent video games all day long. There's that game where they hit people with their cars. And so it happened. We watch shows that are extremely violent. And so this is something that we call entertainment. So to just beware that we don't envy the violent. Verse 32, for the Lord detests the perverse. For anyone and everyone who says, and I am coming this generation that says this, hate the sin, not the sinner. That is not what God says. God says, for the Lord detests the perverse. Those who have turned from the straight path, which is God, to go on the crooked or perverse path. God hates that. That is not what God desires of you, right? And I want to say that God loves everyone, and he does shower his love, and he opens his love to you, but he hates that you are going on this crooked path. He hates the perverse, right? He hates anything that isn't clean, straight, and narrow. That's what the Lord does. And then it says in verse 35 that the wise inherit honor, but fools only get shame. And I just want to compare this when in verse 32, when another topic that I wanted to just bring up with this, for the Lord detests the perverse, but takes the upright into his confidence. I wanted to compare this to verse 11 because it says he hates the perverse, but it also says, or the crooked, right? But he also says, my son, do not despise the Lord's discipline. So there's something to be said that says that we do all sin. We are going to get disciplined, right? We're going to get rebuked. We're going to get disciplined. It's not about someone who sins. It's about someone who consistently sins and turns himself away from the Lord, right? There's a consistency there. There's a turning from the Lord. There's a misrepresentation of the word. There's a misrepresentation of what is true, just, and right. And those are the things that he hates, not someone who sins. So I want to be clear that they don't contradict themselves, right? These verses don't contradict each other. There is a difference between someone who sins and then someone who is perverse, someone who is a sinner. All right. And then this last one, Proverbs 4, I feel like this one is a little bit different because he starts out different. In verse 1, he says, listen, my sons, to a father's instruction. So it feels like this is kind of a different area in which he wrote maybe This is like a psalm or a song or something that he wrote. Listen, my sons, to a father's instruction. Pay attention and gain understanding. So again, he's speaking to his children. He says, get wisdom, get understanding. Do not forget my words or turn away from them. Don't forsake wisdom. She's going to protect you. Again, it's not going to be money or anything else. This is a theme here that we go. The beginning of wisdom is this: get wisdom. That's the beginning of wisdom. Wisdom isn't given to you automatically. You've got to reach out for it. You've got to ask for it. You've got to pray for it. Get wisdom. This is what Solomon did, following his footsteps. Though it cost all you have, get understanding. Why would this have cost? I want to leave that as a question, right? So it says, it might cost you everything, but get understanding. And I just want to reach out and say, why? Why would that cost? What would the cost be? You would go, it's got to be easy breezy to get understanding. Why is there a cost there? All right, and then in verse 10 it says, listen, my son, accept what I say, and the years of your life will be many. This is repetitive. I instruct you in the way of wisdom and lead you along straight paths. So essentially, listen to your father. Verse 14, don't set foot on the path of the wicked or walk in the way of evildoers. Avoid it. Don't travel on it. Turn your way from it, for they can't rest until they do evil. So evil cannot rest until they do evil. So don't even set foot on that path. Verse 18, the path of the righteous is like the morning sun. It should be beautiful. You want to look at it. Like, remember what we talked about, the light in the beginning. And then it says, above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. And I've talked about this on a lot of occasions, about everything coming from the heart. Sometimes we go, well, I won't say that I hate that guy, but I totally hate that guy. We got to change that internally, right? Just because you don't present in a certain way doesn't mean you aren't that certain way. Certain people, or let me rephrase that, people a lot of times have learned to stuff a lot of those things down. My parents taught me that if I don't have anything nice to say, then don't say anything at all. So I'm just going to stuff it down, and I'm just going to get bitter thinking about how much I hate them or how much they don't deserve and I deserve more, right? We have to change that heart, right? It has to come internal, because what comes out of the mouth really flows from the heart. Let your eyes look straight ahead. Fix your gaze directly before you. This is on God. Give careful thought to the paths for your feet and be steadfast in all your ways. Do not turn to the right or to the left. Keep your foot from evil. That straight path, that path towards God, is exactly where you should be looking, walking, and stepping, right? As soon as you look in a different direction. I don't know if I told this story before, but one of my friends told me, if you look at a pothole, you're going to drive into it, which I think is kind of funny, because the first thing you do is look at a pothole because you're trying to avoid it. And she says you're going to drive right into it. There's something instinctive about when we look at it, we're kind of, I guess we start aiming for it. This is that same idea. So if you walk down this path and you're looking down that path, that's where your aim is, right? It's to keep your steering wheel aligned with exactly what you're looking at, which is the path in front of you, which is God. Do not turn one way or the other, or you're going to fall into the potholes or off the cliff right into evil. And that's not where you want to be. That's it for today. We're ending that. And I know it was a long one, and I appreciate you guys sticking with me. There's a lot in here to soak up, but a couple chapters in, we're just going to get to do this and don't do that, do this and don't do that. And so I wanted you to get a little bit, once again, talking about the foundations. I want you to get the base of the whole reason that he's doing this. He wants his sons to get this wisdom and get this instruction, probably because of a good reason, is if they're going to lead the kingdom, right? And they're going to lead all the Israelites in these ways. So they are the ones that people are going to look to for wisdom, just like they're looking to Solomon for wisdom. So if you guys like this, hit the like button. Share the channel with people. I really want people to be in and reading their Bible. And then subscribe to the channel. Ring the bell so you guys get notifications every day. And I will be back tomorrow, and we'll be doing more Proverbs. In the meantime, keep reading.